Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. Today we have a very interesting episode with not one, not two, but three distinguished guests who bring lots of insights into the world of multiculturalism and technology. Join us, we have Paolo Ragone, Marketing Manager at Exact Learning Solutions, a company known for its innovative learning content management system. Giuseppe Rodio, also from Exact Learning Solutions, who has extensive experience in project management and supporting startups. And Annelie Wambeek. She's an independent DEIB, which is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging trainer, a speaker and facilitator. Annelie draws from her own lived experience of living and working around the world and strives for a more inclusive world. Well, and as you have probably already guessed by my accent, I am your host for today, all the way from Madrid to the world, María Roa. So let's start. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria, for having us. Pleasure, Maria. Thank you.
Well, since today we have people from different countries, I think Annelie is in Amsterdam, you guys are in Italy, right? And I am in Spain. Well, and we all have different backgrounds. I want to start by asking, how do you see multiculturalism shaping the global business environment today? And can you share any personal experiences where multiculturalism has played a crucial role in your professional life? Maybe Giuseppe, do you want to start with this one?
Yes, I can break the ice. I'm happy. And indeed, given this very nice multicultural podcast we have today, definitely this is a good occasion to discuss the topic. Rather than shaping the global business environment, I'd say that multiculturalism is inherently part of the global business environment. You would not have the global business environment without the merging of all cultures coming together. Thanks to technology mostly. I think we can imagine, we can look at technology as a road, as an avenue to make information and ideas travel more quickly and with less barriers, across different cultures and different countries. And so I think that at any level, from startups to large corporation, when you want to be part of the global business community, you need to inherently cope with different cultures coming together. And the way, if I can think of a way that multiculturalism shapes the global business environment, the net result of multiculturalism, it cannot be anything other than positive, because in the end of the day, you have when you have multicultural teams, you have views from different backgrounds, people from different countries coming together, and that cannot do anything other than improving the decision-making process and eventually, leading to better decision in business environment and business goals coming from the different inputs from different cultures. I cannot think of any better way to learn from each other than shortening distances between cultures, in essence, in my view. And I don't know if you want to, speaking about, a way that this is impacting our own business and our own work at Exact Learning Solution. We can mention something about our mission.
Yeah, basically, one of our goals is also to merge people from different countries together through the collaboration in learning. We mostly work in the learning environment, and when we joined the company, what we realized is that most of the companies that our previous colleagues used to work with were smaller company, and right now we are mostly working with a big company that have access to bigger budget, and they have better opportunities than smaller startups. So what we wanted to do was to connect people and give them the opportunity to work with our technology, even if they come from maybe countries that don't have access to a lot of opportunities to invest into big technology, or they are smaller companies, so they need to grow. And in order to do so, we want to support them with our technology. And this is why our goal is to democratize learning, to make our software and technology accessible to everyone. And everyone means people that have less means, like people that have less opportunities to access to budget, but also people that maybe come from places where their language is not English as the first language. So our goal right now is to democratize at 360.
And
Yeah,
maybe
indeed.
from my side, I'm happy
Sure.
to
Go ahead, Annelie.
Yeah. So for me, actually, my personal experience of multiculturalism is what has led me into the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I was born in Sweden, and I'm half Sri Lankan, half English, but I lived in Spain and India and Sweden, and I'm currently based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And as Giuseppe and Paolo mentioned, it is almost impossible nowadays to find a monocultural team. I think every team around the world is mixed in some way. And I look forward to, in a little bit, talking about the difference between multicultural and intercultural, because for me, those are two very different things. But they have it's been my life and now my work as well, this multicultural experience.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And I kind of feel the same way because I'm Spanish, but I have lived in the States. I did live in UK. I lived in Mexico. I lived in France, and now I work for an Irish company, but that is global. So half of our team it is based in the US, and I feel all these makes everything we do so global, so open. We need to look everything from every point of view, we need to think about how everyone would look at everything we do from the marketing point of view. It's not only one angle. So it is really important to do this because before, when I used to work for a Spanish company in a Spanish team, everything was all the time the same. And just to give you a really small example, the holidays, for instance, would be Easter and Christmas, and now, for instance, we do celebrate in my company, or we do happy holidays. We don't do Merry Christmas because not everyone celebrate Christmas in the world. They celebrate different holidays, or stuff like that. So it's a type of things that you need to think when you're working in a global company for a multicultural environment. So these little tiny things are, things that you need to take into consideration. But going back to what you were talking, Annelie, that's really interesting because, I mean, understanding this dynamic is essential, especially when it comes to learning and addressing biases. And there is some effective strategies from learning across cultures and addressing ethnocentrism in the workplace. So can you provide some examples on how you think you can implement these strategies?
So multicultural, cross-cultural, and intercultural are very similar terms. And I would say there's been a kind of evolution from multicultural to intercultural. But if I start with multicultural, what that tends to refer to is that there's several cultures or ethnic groups. So, for example, people live alongside each other, but each cultural group doesn't necessarily have engaging interactions. So you could have a multicultural neighborhood, and you might, go to a Turkish shop or a Moroccan shop, for example, but you might not be interacting necessarily with people from other cultures. Which then brings us to cross-cultural, and cross-cultural tends to compare different cultures. And the field that I work in actually used to be called the cross-cultural field. So differences are kind of understood and acknowledged, but it's often that you're comparing one culture to another. And in cross-cultural in particular, one culture is considered the norm, whether that's Western culture or, depending where you're based. And the other cultures are compared and contrasted then to the dominant culture. And I would say now we are hopefully most of us are in the space of intercultural. And this describes communities that are mixed, but there is a deep understanding and respect for cultures because the focus is on mutual exchange of ideas. And in an intercultural society, the focus is more on the interaction between the cultures rather than, everyone adapting, for example, to one way. So from that very basic overview, I would say the work that I do is how do we get intercultural teams? So as you all mentioned, we have global teams, sometimes remote, sometimes all working in one place. And what this cultural diversity brings is great in terms of diversity of thought. But of course, we all come from our own position, culturally, with our values, our communication styles, everything. So the work that I do, I see as, in a way, kind of leveling the playing field. So we are able to talk about cultural differences and, what time might mean to you versus me, without always resorting back to this is the right way to do things, this is the wrong way. So I would say, yeah, long story short, intercultural is maybe the more gray area. And for me, and I think in the DEI space as well, that's where the most nuanced work can be done. But saying this, my definitions would come from my background. I'm a sociologist and international relations. So other people could have different definitions, but these are the definitions that I encounter in my work.
Yeah, I think this is super interesting because, as you say, communication, it's really different in between cultures. And me being Spanish, I mean, I guess Italian is the same thing. I mean, sometimes when we talk, we make lots of gestures. We talk really loud. That doesn't mean we're mad or upset or we're screaming or anything. That's just a way of communicating. And we might just be saying the simplest thing, And now, like when I started working with people from the UK or Ireland, at the beginning I felt like, oh my God, they speak so low. They're like felt I guess they felt maybe I was being too loud. Maybe I was not being the nicest person around. And I think now they did come to that point, as you say, they learned, and they address the way I am. And I also learned how they were, and we came to like an intermediate point, which is great. So it's not their side, it's not my side. We came to an understanding, which is amazing because, yeah, it is. I guess it is sometimes complicated, because communication, it's really different between cultures. I mean,
that is exactly the point I was making in the very beginning. See, there is no better way for us to learn from each other than being a multicultural environment, and understanding each other, understanding different behaviors, features of our different cultural backgrounds, than just being together and learn from one another, from the way we
and
interact.
the funniest thing, that the other day I was at a meeting just with the Spanish people, and I felt like, why are they all screaming? What are they doing? I mean,
Because we got used to the Irish,
because I got used to all the things, and then I said, like, maybe I'm becoming too Irish. It's just so sometimes, yeah, you get a beat this way, and they get to get.
embracing. It's about embracing those differences and learn
It
from
is
each other.
about embracing, but yeah, as you say, like at the end, understanding this dynamic is essential, and you need to learn and address these biases. So what do you think are like some effective strategies for learning across cultures and addressing ethnocentrism in the workplace? Do you think, Annelie, you can provide some examples of how you would implement these strategies in organizations?
Of course. So to start with, I think what I always like to tell people is that we are all biased and we are all ethnocentric. We see things from our own perspective because we are human. And so I'm very conscious in all the work that we do. We're not trying to eliminate bias, right? We want ourselves to be more aware of what are these stereotypes that we're falling into, things like that. So for me, the most effective way that I have found is if we can introduce a common vocabulary. So instead of saying, for example, my Dutch colleague is rude or my Spanish colleague is, always late, there are a whole bunch of tools out there, and I use what is called cultural dimensions. And the way this works is there are different dimensions, for example, communication, scheduling, evaluating, and a lot of research has been done to plot different countries on this. So you could see, you know, what does a stereotypical Italian plot like, and then an American, for example. Of course, the caveat here is that some people would argue, but aren't we just falling into stereotypes again? So for me, the key here is, yes, we need a vocabulary to discuss cultures, and that's something that we can all learn together, but it starts with ourselves, the awareness of our own culture and the awareness that we are not the norm. I think we always think the way I do things is the right way, or it is the way we've always grown up with. And I think it starts with breaking that down a little bit, which can be, it's quite confronting to realize.
Tough.
It's tough.
I can tell you. I lived
is.
it. It is hard to change things after so many years doing them the same way.
Indeed. And I think the focus there is who is adapting, right? Because often people are adapting to the dominant culture. But, you know, the reason we have diversity and cultural diversity is because of the perspective that everyone brings. And, you know, like you mentioned around communication, some people might be comfortable speaking up in meetings, whereas in some cultures, that's just not done. That's not socially acceptable. So are we offering spaces in organizations that really cater to the variety of needs of people from different cultures? So yeah, I would say the most effective strategy that I've seen is giving people a vocabulary to be able to talk about difference and similarity. And also there is a lot of research that shows that teams which are heterogeneous, so which have the same, for example, nationality, at the beginning stages of the team forming, they are much more productive. So in the forming and storming phases of team productivity, a non-multicultural team will be extremely productive, and then they will start to plateau. Whereas in an intercultural team or a mixed team, the beginning is a lot slower. So, you know, finding what are the common norms and values and, you know, intangible behavior. You then see at the beginning phase, it's slower. And then as soon as the team, the intercultural team, is able to discuss change and things like that, the productivity skyrockets. And it then overtakes teams that are monocultural. So for me, I think that's excellent research. That's why we need to do more intercultural training.
Yeah, I'm really happy. My team is completely multicultural. I mean, we are all from one part of the world, and that's amazing. We all work greatly together, and we all give a different thing to the team, bring a different thing to the table. So let's all go for multicultural teams.
It's not about just productivity. I think it's just even about the actual outcome of the team, which is composed by a multicultural group, rather than one composed by people.
Yeah, and we have different points of views, so that it's seriously, it is great.
Complement each other. Yes, they complete each other, and sometimes we'll see obviously things that people from other country wouldn't see, or vice versa, and that completes, you know, the decision making.
We think different, you know, we come up with different solutions to problems because we were taught different to, we were taught to think different to problems, because that's how they teach you. You know, whenever you're little, you learn mathematics different. It seems like a very little things, but you're taught to learn to solve problems in a different way. So whenever you're older, that helps you in a different manner. So I think it does help to have a multicultural team.
And that's a good example as well. When you go in another country actually to work, you even have to adapt, for example, to how they read math.
That's oh my God.
It's not much
is different.
Yeah, it's not much about maybe, Lee mentioned, adapting to the dominant culture. Very often it's about adapting to the culture of the country in which you go to work, because of these different parameters that might seem small, but are so crucially important.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, like in Spain, to write 1,000, we put the bullet point, and in UK and Ireland, it's the comma. And I was like, the comma means comma. It means like it's nothing. It's 1 cent, you know, not 1,000.
You have the lakhs as well, right?
What?
Like in India. Annelie, I think he's from Sri Lanka as a background. You have the lakhs to count thousands, lakhs, right?
Oh, really?
So a lakh is 100,000. And in India, they have a crore, which I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but completely different words.
And the other thing is also the euro sign. We always put it after the number.
Yeah. Pound sterling.
And
Yeah.
UK and even Ireland puts the euro sign on before, and I'm like, why before? Why not after?
It's not detailed, but it matters so much, especially if you work in accounting, or something like a financial job.
It does.
So,
It does. So it's those little things. But anyways, so sorry, we could talk about these differences that actually make us great. I always say the difference make us better. But we could talk about this all day. We were talking, and let's not get into it. We were talking about these tools and the vocabulary with Annelie. But as we talk about learning and understanding, technology does also play a significant role in bringing the cultural gaps. In your opinion, Paolo, since you were talking, how can technology facilitate better understanding and communication across different cultures? Is there any specific tool or platform that you find particularly effective? I feel you haven't talked enough. Sorry, you need to talk more.
To shine. No, with speed. Let me share an anecdote. I lived in Japan for 9 years. When I was in Japan for the first few days, I wasn't able to read the kanji, the symbols, they use for the language.
The kanji, yeah.
Yeah, I had this friend Yuta from Japan, who, of course, he was able to read these kanjis. And when I moved there, I used to take pictures of the kanjis that were very important for my survival, like something related to electricity or like the bills or something like that. And I was sending him the picture of the kanjis, like, how do you read this? Because if you don't know how to read it, you cannot search it on the vocabulary. So I had to wait maybe 24 hours before getting the answers from Utah with the translation of the kanji.
Why?
And it was quite stressful. But then I realized there was an app that allows you to take the picture of the kanji and translate it on the spot. That was so helpful for me to adapt to the culture and make friends. And my friend was just Yuta at the time, and then I got much more friends thanks to the technology. And I realized that something that makes the process faster can help you to adapt faster. So it opens a lot of new opportunities. And what we're doing now, what we're trying to utilize this experience in our work is through the collaborative aspect of working together, not just like me doing something and then I pass this thing to someone else that has to do these other things, and maybe I do it using my own cultural tools, my own background, and then the other person has to adapt to what I say, and then maybe this other person use their own culture to operate on that document, and so on. And it's not effective. It's not effective. The best way to have a good output for, let's say, content, and because you're in marketing, is to work together at the same time, collaborate, so work together on something while that thing is in front of us together at the same time. And of course, if I'm in Italy and my colleagues is in Japan, I need something that connects me. And that's the technology. That's the beauty of technology, doing the same thing together at the same time, which is not just, I do this and then you do your work and then you understand each other. So this is why, again, like having a shared vocabulary, having a shared tool is very important. And whatever tool you use, of course, if you use our tool, we're happier. But whatever you use, it has to be something that allows you to do something really together, which means in the same space, technologically speaking, and the same time.
Yeah, it's about overcoming barriers, absolutely.
Yeah,
and, reducing the distance that is between us, whether you just communicate in a social environment or you collaborate in a business environment. Technology helps us to overcome space, in essence, to bring us closer together. And in the end of the day, we truly progress and I'm saying this as a human, as a species, when we get closer, not when we get, further away. So when we use technology well, because of course there are even uses of technology that might be not as good as, for example, a software that is designed for learning. When the information that circulates, on a technological platform is not a correct information. Think about fake news, for example. That's that's sort of like a situation, a case in which technology can be actually harmful because of the speed of this, enhanced, sort of effect of speed in circulation of information. But when you use it for a good cause, for example, for learning, it critically helps you, to just learn and grow. So yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to say hi to Yuta. He was very helpful.
You were talking about you being in Japan and calling there, and I was thinking about my first work in the newspaper, and nothing like we had just started having internet. I'm sorry, I'm old, and we were using the fax, so
Likewise, but in myself, I think
so yes, technology is indeed very important and gives us many opportunities. So yeah, let's go and use it. But yes, we are saying technology indeed has a very powerful role, and as Annelie is saying, so does the language we use, and that's why vocabulary is also very important. How do you think we can use a shared vocabulary to bridge those cultural divides and promote depolarization? Do you think any of you, like, I don't mind, or maybe all of you, can share any anecdotes or examples where a common language or understanding help resolve cultural misunderstandings? Any of you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here.
Go.
So for me, I think having a shared language is what allows us to start the discussion. So it also allows us to depolarize the discussions because we are now speaking with, terms that are less loaded. For example, as I mentioned, so-and-so is rude or direct, or, they have bad communication style. If we can start discussing and saying, look, they are a high context communicator, for example. What does that mean? What does that make me? What are the differences between the two and the pros and cons? And for me, language is really important because in all the work that we do, I think all of us, we want people to feel included, right? We want people to feel like they belong. And I always go back to the quote, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. So for me, that's a really nice summary to kind of see that you can't force someone to feel like they belong in a team or to feel like they're included. Those are results of having a well-trained team, whether it's on culture, on neurodiversity, on whatever aspect of identity and dimension. I think giving people the language to start having these discussions and to look inwards, for me, that's definitely step one. But yeah, maybe Paolo and Giuseppe, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to work in different continents, and even right now we work with many clients from many different countries in the world. And what I realize in these years is that we all want the same things, and sometimes the problem is just in the form, maybe the language, maybe the words that we pick to communicate. But if you are able enough to understand that all of this come from like your cultural background, the way you be, even if you're from the same city, maybe this other person has a different life experience, and the way they communicate is very different. But in the end, what we want is always the same. We all want to flourish. We all want to get better, learn, and get better at what we do and get a good outcome of what we do. And our ability as communicator and as people that work together is to understand that maybe that person picked the wrong form to tell me something, but in the end what they want is the same thing that I want. So maybe the best way to build a bridge is to ignore the fact that there is a real bridge. It's not something that we have to connect. We are already connected somehow. We have just to use the same kind of like commune and like unified form to work together.
Yeah, we just need to sort of like, break any barrier, whether actual, physical, or imaginary, and reach out to each other. And often that comes to very human qualities as well. For example, sense of humor. See, we recently went through the Arabization process of our software, which was very complex, because of course, it's about changing completely the platform, right to left. The language was different. Cultural parameters were different. We had to delete some images. It's just very different cultures from ours. But at the end of the day, as Paolo was saying, we're all human beings. We all have those common goals, and we all have some qualities that really make us the same. And we can use those along with technology as a helper, as a facilitator, to get together and come closer. And we found that sense of humor, obviously understanding each other, and not going over maybe some local sensitivities, can be somehow a very powerful tool, even in business. So
Yeah, you're completely right. I think I read somewhere that Peace Corps volunteers, because they do work in various countries, they often undergo extensive language and cultural training before their assignments, because they need to learn local language and customs so they can build trust and rapport with the community they serve to foster cooperation. So this does show that this is really important. Everywhere you go, you should learn a bit about the culture, about the people, about their language. I mean, that's never wrong. I mean, I guess we all do. We are all that kind of people. But
and to broaden your mental horizon, absolutely.
correct. But well, I'm really sorry we're coming to an end, because we could keep on talking about this. Maybe one time we should do a second part of this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should, but before we go, is there anything else that you guys, well, guys and girls, sorry, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience today?
It has been lovely to be here, and I mean, we already knew Annelie from last year's event in London, the Learning Technologies, and I mean, we already know the good work she's doing, and we really love to work with her because we have a shared purpose of like bringing people, common values, bringing people together. And thank you, Maria, for giving us this stage. It's been lovely to talk with you as well, and we really hope to do this.
And again. Actually, we're going to be in Learning Technologies again this year, next year. Please do come visit us too. I know that VistaTalks is there usually. So if you are in town, do come and let's hang out.
Yeah, and everyone who's listening, please come join us at our booth.
Let's make it a party. All get together.
That's great. So let's meet in Learning Technologies. Annelie?
I always have a lot more to say, but I will keep it short. Maybe something that occurred to me when we were talking about language is also that even if we are all speaking the same language, the values, for example, we might have corporate values of, I don't know, trust and responsibility and something else, but how those are interpreted by different cultures is a completely different thing. How you trust, how I trust, what does independence mean to me? What does it mean to you? So I think from our discussion, it is clear that we need to be able to discuss using some of the same vocabulary, but also keep in mind of not falling into the trap that everyone thinks like us. And like we've said, that is a great thing. Diversity it's necessary, it's a fact of life. And what I really hope to do in the work is to make difference an asset instead of an obstacle,
100%. 100%. I think that's a great way of ending this conversation. Difference needs to be an asset. It does. I mean, I agree with you, Annelie, 100%. I love that sentence. That's so good. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show with Paolo Ragone, Giuseppe Rodio, and Annelie Wambeek. please make sure to tune in again to send out to listen to the next VistaTalk show, where we will be discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world. And thank you for the three of you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks.